and welcome to today's webinar, Direct Sales Marketing, hosted by the Pennsylvania Association for Sustainable Agriculture. This is the third of 4 webinars related to marketing we are offering over the next few weeks, which are supported by a specialty crop block grant from the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. You can learn more about the final webinar we have coming up next week related to internet marketing and all of Pasa's events on our website at pasafarming.org. My name is Michelle Spencer, Membership Director with Pasa. Also with me today is Tracy Raymond. Tracy has been working for Pasa over the last several months on the grant I mentioned and was key in pulling together this webinar series together. Tracy will be joining us later on in the session, and she'll be helping to moderate the question and answer segment at the end of this presentation. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. We've taken a screenshot, an example of the attendee interface. You should be seeing something like this in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Currently, you're listening in using your computer's speaker system by default. If you do prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed, and all participants are currently muted. With the last 2 webinars we've hosted, we've had a few folks having issues with the computer audio kind of coming in and out. So if you do start to experience any problems like that, please attempt to use the telephone option, and hopefully that will solve any of the issues. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the questions pane, also in that control panel. You can send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect those and then address all of them during the question and answer session at the end. And if for any reason we don't have time to address all the questions, we can do follow-up via email as well. So the session is also being recorded, and we will post it on Pasa's YouTube page for future viewing. And any additional materials or handouts will also be sent after the presentation is over. We will be doing a short survey too. Hosting webinars for Pasa is something fairly new, so we're always looking for feedback on how to improve. And also, since this is related to a grant, as I mentioned, we have some specific questions about participant knowledge in terms of what's being presented here today. So we do appreciate your feedback on that survey after the presentation's over. I would now like to introduce our presenters today, Jennifer Brodsky and Rebecca Frimmer of Kitchen Table Consultants. Jennifer's expertise in sustainable food was developed during 15+ years of hands-on experience on farms and in retail operations. Her farming career began as the general manager of the on-farm market, the pick-your-own operation, and community engagement at Willow Creek Orchards in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. Jennifer then stepped into the newly created role of Chief Operating Officer for Greener Partners. Under her leadership, Greener Partners was awarded the Governor's Award for Environmental Excellence for the successful revitalization of the 130-acre Longview Center for Agriculture into a thriving farm, local food market, and food hub. In 2009, she co-founded Kitchen Table Consultants with Ted LeBeau with a goal to help passionate farmers and food artisans build lasting, profitable, locally focused businesses. In 1997, Rebecca became a manager partner of her first business, an event planning and promotions company called Millennium 3 Core based in State College. Making the transition to local food in 2009, Rebecca had the opportunity to lead the e-commerce website launch at Bruno Brothers and served as marketing manager overseeing the strategy for a multi-enterprise 70-plus-year-old brand. Most recently, Rebecca spent 2 years as general manager of Greensgrove Farms, a nonprofit organization that has trailblazed urban farming and sustainability with a multi-farm CSA model, serving almost 1,000 member families and an on-farm market. Today, Rebecca works as an entrepreneur in residence at Kitchen Table Consultants, incubating her next entrepreneurial venture while helping local farmers and food makers build their businesses. She is also an adjunct faculty member for Temple University's Fox School of Business MBA program in the Marketing and Strategy course. So now I will turn things over to Jennifer and Rebecca.
Great. Good morning, everyone. We're just going to take a moment to pull up our slide.
All right. Is that everyone seeing the title slide? Jen, are you all set here?
I'm seeing it. Yes.
Okay, great.
So we're just going to take a quick minute to introduce ourselves. So today we're going to be talking about direct sales marketing and expanding the current and finding the new. So this is a pretty broad overview, but we have a good chunk of time today, so we're excited to share some of our insights with you. Just a little bit about KTC. We offer a variety of services to for-profit and nonprofit businesses in local food and farming. As you can see here, advising and coaching, small business bookkeeping, and several other services that we offer to the community. Next slide. Just a little bit about who we are. As Michelle said in our intro, our goal is really simple, and we're here to help passionate farmers and food artists build lasting, profitable, and locally focused businesses. And we do that based on our 4 tenets. 1, that we've walked a mile in your shoes. 2, that there is no BS, and anyone that's on the call that knows us knows that that's true. 3, that we do roll up our sleeves and work right alongside our clients, and that we're prepared to win and lose with the business. That's a little bit about KTC. Next slide. Just want to go through today's agenda. So one of the things that we've always found very valuable to our clients when we're starting to think about either new or expansion of sales channels is the planning piece, which sometimes we jump right over because we listen to our gut, which I think oftentimes is great, but this is an opportunity for us to slow down a little bit and really evaluate. So we're going to, after planning, we're going to talk about some of our direct sales channels that we're going to be exploring. And then we're going to talk about some of the keys to success. So you guys are having a little trouble with this slide. I'm just going to keep going until you tell me to stop. But we're going to talk about visual display. We're going to talk about marketing planning, and we're going to talk about event planning. We get a lot of questions about event planning and marketing, and we really think that that's such an important piece in terms of our planning process when we're looking at new sales channels. Next slide, please.
So while we're just beginning here and still getting set up a little bit with the housekeeping, is everything looking better now with the slides? We're good?
Looks good to me.
Okay, great. Let's just keep on going. Thanks, Jen.
Okay. So how do I start planning? So next slide, please. We're going to talk about 2 ways that we look at planning, and we look at this with all of our clients. So the first is a SWOT analysis, most of you are probably familiar with. In the SWOT analysis, we really focus on sort of our professional, the aptitudes of the business and our opportunities as business owners, but we always consider our personal goals as well. So we're going to talk about both, and we always consider them side by side. So when we're looking at SWOT analysis, we're talking about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Next slide, please. So what we're looking at here, and why we think the SWOT analysis is so important, this is an actual SWOT analysis that we did with one of our clients. So we started our planning in the very early winter for the next year, and our clients were convinced that their next great opportunity on the farm was doing distribution of local products. They had a truck, they had relationships with great other local farmers, and they felt the pressure of other local food distributors and cooperatives moving into their territory. So we looked at their SWOT analysis, and this, like I said, this is an actual SWOT analysis. And what we saw here, so we're going through the strengths, we see a good customer base. We see local customers that are passionate and loyal about what we do. We have a farm market. We have great relationships with the farmers and suppliers, so that's what we talked about. That's what led them to thinking about maybe we can take the show on the road. We have a refrigerated truck. We finally have a good crew that was coming back for the second year, which is something that this farm had struggled with. They also have a beautiful farm. It's already a destination, and they have facilities to manage public engagement. Some of their weaknesses that we saw, the first one was overcommitted owners. So they were spread thin. They were feeling like their time was crunched. Flat sales, which was a problem and something that we needed to really review and put time and attention here. No management capacity at the staff level. So that strength, yay, a good crew coming back. There was no one operating at a management level. They were still growing a lot of different crops. Not all of their systems were in place. They weren't able to track their time appropriately and gather meaningful data about where they should be spending most of their time. Truck always needed repairs, and the truck was not full on all the routes, which led us again back to that, how do we fill the truck and be more efficient? The opportunities, we saw wholesale sales using current relationships, more on-farm events, they were already a big hit, more on-farm market sales, well, we already have the staff there and the product, let's keep driving that. People wanted to be on the farm, and their festival sales were growing. The threats that they really felt were competition from pickup CSAs from out of the area and just more, generally more CSAs. And so when we went through this SWOT analysis, it became really clear that their strengths and their opportunities were really on the farm. And it became very clear to them as they went through this exercise that going toe-to-toe with experienced logistics professionals who are already running cooperatives and already running local food distributors just wouldn't be a good choice for them, but they really needed to focus on their core business. So that's just an example of how helpful a SWOT analysis can be when you're sure that you have your next great project in mind and really helping you think critically about whether it's a good fit. And next I'm going to hand this over to Rebecca, and she's going to talk a little bit about personal goals.
Thanks, Jen. So basically, when it comes to addressing what opportunities we want to take on as a business owner, we always want to think about our personal goals and what success looks like for me and my family. You know, as entrepreneurs who are running small businesses, we often live in our businesses. We often take our businesses home with us at night. It becomes part of the family dynamic. And so it's really important to not just think about what is the business capable of doing and where are my strengths and weaknesses there, but what does this really look like for me and for my family? So we've broken this down into 4 different bullet points. What are my personal financial goals? Where do I really need to grow to be financially satisfied with my business? What's time management look like? Can I really take something else on right now without neglecting some of my personal and family obligations? Communication is another one. We need to talk about where we're going and growing. And affinities and aptitudes is the last, which is really just a fancy way of saying, you know, what do I like doing and what am I especially good at? Or on the other hand, what don't I like doing and, you know, what do we need outside help to do really, really well? So when we talk about personal goals and assessing that, there's a reason why we're doing it. And we just sort of listed those here so that we can get a deeper understanding of why we want to go through this exercise, because self-reflection can sometimes be a little bit painful, right? So first of all, we want to avoid the struggle of constantly chasing tasks that we're just not good at or that we hate doing. And as business owners, sometimes we really do find ourselves in that position. We're sort of always picking up the slack on the stuff that nobody else wants to do. I think the other point is just knowing exactly what you will and you will not tolerate, and that helps you build a realistic definition of success and a pathway to get there. You know, if there are certain things that you won't do, like we do not want farm workers living on the farm, or we do not want to hire more than a handful of people because we don't want to deal with that much relationship management. If you can just articulate these things and discuss them with your family, they will help you create that best pathway to being successful, both personally and in business. And then the last one is just to be able to proactively share and communicate with your family, which obviously is going to be a huge help in relieving tension on family relationships, because we understand in advance what the business is going to be demanding of us. You know, we can say, all right, everybody, we are going to be doing some major expansion this year, here, here, and here. It's going to be a little bit stressful, but when we get through it, this is going to be the light at the end of the tunnel, and we can see if our family's on board with what we really want to do. You know, it's funny, we work with a lot of small farmers, and sometimes only one member of, you know, a husband and wife team or a couple team is running the farm, and the other one is working off the farm. And we often hear, you know, negative feedback from the member of the family that's working off the farm towards the business in general. And just sharing more information proactively can make a huge difference in everybody feeling on board and excited about your business and your success. So we're going to dive right in and begin our discussion on direct sales channels. We're going to talk about some keys to success that we want to think about internally and externally. And then we're also going to talk about 4 specific direct sales channels with some of the overarching themes on what we want to think about when we're going to create a new or expand, and then also some tips for beginners who are doing this for the first time.
Hey, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Should we take a minute now to do the poll? We're really interested in learn, because these are a bunch of broad topics. We were interested to learn whether most of the folks on the call were more experienced farmers looking to expand channels, or newer farmers looking for new channels. So we were going to just take a moment to take that poll, and that'll help kind of influence how we guide the rest of the conversation.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Where do I do that?
And so we have the quick poll on the screen now, and Michelle is directing that.
Yep. Yep. Can
Okay,
you guys
great.
see that on the screen? Can you see the results coming in? Okay. Just give me a cue when you want that to stop, and then it should go back to your screen sharing of your slides.
Go ahead and go back.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Do we have have any results from that we can see?
Yeah, right now it's about 46% are just starting out, and 54% are experienced but looking to expand, and that's about 80%.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Good. All right, so
Well,
it's pretty even split down the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Glad we included both, Rebecca.
Definitely. I'm glad we did. So back to our overview of direct sales models. For just quick for to the end customer without an intermediate party such as a distributor or retailer. Why do we like direct sales? We like direct sales because if we don't have an intermediary, we get to keep all of the margin for ourselves. So sometimes in order to sell much larger volumes or to have a much wider reach, we need a distributor. But there are sales channels that we can pursue where all of the gross margin is going to go back to the farm. And those are CSA, on-farm sales, farmers markets, and online sales. Those are the 4 that we're going to touch on today. We'll go a little bit deeper into that in just a few minutes. So first, touching on this keys to success that I mentioned, right? Before we decide to launch or expand a new channel, what should we consider? What are the areas of self-assessment, right? Where are we looking at our business to figure out if we have resources, if we need resources, or if things are a fit? So first off is logistics, right? Do we have the resources that we need to get things from A to B? If we're doing a channel like CSA where we're delivering off-site, we're going to need some transportation, things like that to consider. Do we have the assets that we need? So do we have the buildings, the fixtures, the equipment that we need to get the job done? What's the labor and time commitment going to be? Do we need to staff up? Can we do this with the people that we have? What about soft skills? Again, is this something that we're good at or something that we're going to need some assistance getting rolling with? And then marketing and value proposition is the last piece that we want to consider in an internal assessment. So when it comes to marketing, a couple of the things that we want to think about are, like, do I actually like marketing? Do I enjoy that task set? Or do I have a staff member or somebody else that already helps me with that? Or might I need to hire somebody outside that can help me do a great job with marketing? Do I have a clear message? Do I know what I'm talking about? Who am I actually talking to, right? Who's my audience? And then do I have a unique offering? Am I offering something that is going to draw attention and create demand? And that really feeds into value proposition, which is, creating a statement for your business or your farm where you can explain explicitly why you do what you do and how you do it really, really well. And on the next slide, I have a specific definition of that we'll look at here. So in its simplest terms, a value proposition is a positioning statement that explains what benefit you provide, for who, and how you do it uniquely well. It describes your target buyer, the problem that you solve, and why you're distinctly better than the alternative. What this really drills down to is, how am I better than my competition, and how am I communicating that to drive interest in my product or service? So if we don't have a value proposition on paper for our business, it's probably a tool that we really want to have in our toolbox accessible. Because when we're thinking about writing content for marketing, or we're thinking about starting, a campaign to drive more traffic or sales, we really want to make sure that we are holding to our value proposition and that we're shouting it from the rooftops, because this is what makes us special. I'm going to tell a little sidebar story here about value proposition. So last year I was working on a project with farmers and meat processors, and I interviewed a lot of meat processors because we were trying to get to the essence of why there's such a gap between what the farmers want and what they were providing. And so I asked them, can you explain your value proposition? Can you articulate what you do and how you do it better than somebody else? Like, why would somebody want your service? And one of the meat processors said to me, well, I don't understand what you're talking about. I just cut meat. And so that is a perfect example of how a business might struggle when they can't articulate their value proposition. Because how are they going to go out and get more customers when they need them if they can't talk about how or why their service is special or better, or why it might be attractive to a customer? So I just grow vegetables isn't the answer to why you should have a CSA. So think about this and just make sure that you have something like this on hand for your farm as you grow and develop your marketing campaign. Okay, so moving on with Case to Success. We just talked about internal things to consider, so now we want to broadly touch on external things to consider. When I'm going to launch or expand, what do I need to think about in the environment or as an external assessment? And so these are just 3 pretty basic bullet points. Supply versus demand, right? Like, do people want what we're offering, and how much of it is already out there, which directly relates to competition, right? Who else is doing this? What are they charging for it? What's their audience look like? Is there something that maybe they're not doing so well that leaves a window of opportunity open for me? And then regulation is the last one. So we want to build a non-farm market. We have to think about zoning. We want to do value-added products. We have to think about kitchen and food safety regulations. So always important to think about, who's going to be watching over this process from a government or regulatory perspective, and what do I need to do to comply? So overall, once we think about internal and external factors before launch or growth, this all really comes down to opportunity assessment, which is just a fancy way of saying, like, is this a good fit for my organization? Or as we see in the thought bubble there, does this opportunity align with my organizational attitudes and aptitudes? And I think the SWOT really helps us drill down on that, the analysis that Jen touched on earlier. So whenever we think about opportunity assessment, I like to think about the 3 pillars of business, which are finance, marketing, and operations. We can't have a successful business unless we are going to be excellent in all 3 of these categories, right? We understand our costs, we understand our profits, we understand how we're communicating and driving our audience, and we understand how to run our business in a way that's efficient and makes sense. So there's 3 bullet points in each of these areas that just help us do a final consideration on opportunity assessment. So first, in finance, we have our impact on cost and sales. So if we're expanding a channel, are we expanding a channel that's profitable? How much more are we going to sell versus how much more are we going to drive costs? And then there's projected budgets, right? So we think something's going to be a really good idea, but when we start to get down to the nitty-gritty details and putting those on paper, let's make a budget. Let's figure out exactly what we need to spend in each of the categories of items that we need, and is it really going to be worth it at the bottom line, which helps us get to that cost versus benefit analysis. I think with a cost versus benefit analysis, though, we're also thinking about time spent, right? Because time is limited. We can't make more time in the day. And so If I'm going to make 5 cents on the dollar with one project, but I'm going to make 40 cents on the dollar with another project, and I don't have time for both, cost-benefit analysis will help us figure out which is going to be the best way to develop our business. So moving on to marketing, when we're doing opportunity assessment, we want to do some target market research. Who's interested in this product or service that we're offering? What are the demographics of the audience that we're going to be talking to, and is it a target-rich environment in the area where we're located? Doing that competitive analysis we talked about earlier. Who else is out there doing this? What are they charging? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Where is there an opportunity for me? And then doing a marketing plan assessment. If I want to drive membership in a CSA up by 40 members in a year, I want to start my first year with 50 to 60 members, what kind of a marketing plan do I need in place to do that? We can't just do Field of Dreams. We can't just say, if we build it, people will come. We need to think about exactly what we're going to say and what vehicles we're going to use to say it, which I'll get into much later in the mini marketing plan module. But we need to assess how we're going to do that time and cost. So sometimes we need to hire someone to do it for us, right? We don't have enough time left in the day, and that costs money. And then the last piece of opportunity assessment is just strategy of your operation. So staffing costs and time. Who has to do this? How much do they cost? How many of them do we need? Do I have time for this? Do my managers have time for this? Is there strength and aptitude within my leadership team to actually handle this project? Or are we going to be spinning our wheels without any expertise in this area? Do I even have enough staff overall to get through this project without total burnout and sending my staff running for the hills and creating a turnover problem? So we want to think about that too. And then available resources and logistics and equipment, right? Do I have coolers? Do I have trucks? Do I have harvest bins? Do I have boxes? What are all the things that I would need to get this done, and how much more do I have to provide to make this growth can happen? All right, so moving on, we're going to start to dive into our specific direct sales models. So Jen and I are going to talk back and forth a little bit during this section, and I'm going to get us started off by talking about CSA as our first direct sales model. So whether we're thinking about expanding or whether we're thinking about starting anew, the first thing that we really want to do is explore the market potential. How much opportunity for growth is there? So one of the things that is really easy to do is start by surveying your dedicated customers, right? You could send out an email survey through a service like SurveyMonkey. You could just call some of your dedicated customers that you know really well, and you could start talking to people. Like if you're already at a farmer's market and you're thinking about CSA or something like that, you start talking to people at market and trying to get an idea of whether or not there's interest there. So just start by surveying the people around you.
I'm sorry. I was just going to jump in and say, I'm a big advocate for the phone call, especially trusted, really loyal customers will spend that like 15 minutes on the phone with you to talk about new opportunities and what they'd like to see, and it's really valuable.
Absolutely, and I think that speaks to the next bullet point, which is the on-farm gathering of stakeholders. I've been in positions at certain organizations where we're trying to figure out if our next step is a good fit or a good idea. And so we'll, call up 15 or 20 of those best customers, brew a couple of pots of coffee and get some snacks together and sit around the table and talk about it, or gathering at a local pub or something like that where we can get some feedback from people and also just reinforce that they're part of this greater community. And I think the last bullet point is, talking specifically about CSA, right? Trends. What's going on in my area? CSAs are often becoming more and more competitive in certain areas, especially urban areas. So we want to gather information, figure out what's going on out there, who are we competing with, and really how dense is the competition. And also, what's everybody else doing? Are they doing like a fixed box? Are they doing a pick your own items? Are they doing a lot of add-ons? What are they doing? So we can understand how we might want to formulate our own offering. So as an example, I'm going to illustrate some of these things through a case study. When I was managing at Greens Grow Farms for a couple of years, when I started there, we had a membership base of around 600-700 families. And we really felt like we had hit a plateau of how many members we could get picking up on the farm. The farm is in North Philadelphia. There's not a ton of parking. It's not the most convenient to the highway. So, you know, how could we figure out how to get more people picking up? We were looking to grow the CSA as our growth strategy for the year, and we really thought that new pickup sites would be the best way for us to do that. But we didn't just want to assume that that was going to work. We wanted to do a little bit of market research, a little bit of surveying of our target customers, and figure out if this really made sense, because we knew that we would probably also lose some of our on-farm customers if we created off-site pickups as well, and how was this going to impact member retention and all of these other factors. So the first thing we did was created a current customer map. We just like dumped all of the information that we had into Excel for our 600-700 member families, and we stuck it into a web app that drops map pins, and we could get a really neat, quick visual of what that customer base looks like. And we saw a really heavy cluster of members right around the farm, and then we also saw customers all the way down into South Philly, all the way into another neighborhood that was quite a ways up a major road from where the farm was, but really situated in a plus sign shape, emerging from the farm down two major arterial roads that would cross the city in two different directions. That gave us really good information right away about where we might want to start looking. Then we sent out a survey to the current customers that were outside of a small radius of the farm, because we had all their information. We created this map, so we decided that we would survey our customers and see what kind of a response we got. See if the members we already had were interested in picking up off the farm. We also asked them a couple of key questions to understand how they were engaging with the farm and how it might impact the CSA experience as a whole, because we also had an on-farm market. So we were asking them questions like, how often do you use the on-farm market? How often do you use the CSA member specials? Because we would often have a couple items that were on sale for CSA members only, like a certain cheese or a certain jam. And they liked that, made them feel special and part of the community. The farm also had an on-site nursery, and we also had farm animals for interactive children's education. So we wanted to find out how important that was to them, and if they felt like they would no longer have that community engagement if they were picking up off the farm. So we got some of these key feedback points and decided that it would probably be a good idea to start these additional pickup sites if there was enough of an interest. So from there, we decided that trying to reach this new target audience would be really challenging. We wanted to start any pickup site off with a minimum of 30 members so that it was worth the time and effort in the logistics and staffing. And we knew that we needed community partners in order to make a big impact with marketing right off the bat. So we looked in these specific neighborhoods for the organizations that were really pulling together members of the community, or places that were hubs of transportation that might have some way of relating back to how people were moving through the city on their way from work to home. We ended up partnering with one community development corporation that was the operator of a large campus that had many office buildings. And so this was a way for us to reach a lot of people who'd be going home from work all at once or who worked in that space. And then we also worked with a retail partner for another one. We actually ended up partnering up with a Williams-Sonoma store that was interested in having, a fresh farm market in the store once a week that was located in actually an urban shopping mall that was a hub of transportation as well. So that worked out really well for us too. And those organizations were able to help us reach people and promote, and also help us hone in on the best times to send someone there to do a talk or pass flyers and promote that the CSA was happening. The retail store even bagged CSA flyers for us for a couple of weeks, and the community partner had us come in when they did some food truck luncheon events and things like that so we could interface with lots of people all at once, and it worked really, really well. I think the key points to take away from this is just that we need to understand our customer needs and what additional levels of engagement we might need with CSA beyond just dropping off a box, right? If we just drop off a box of vegetables, we're probably going to have a pretty high customer churn rate, and we might have some trouble with member retention over time because there's no connection there. There's nothing driving people to go deeper with the farm. They're just picking up a box of vegetables, right? So one of the things that we did was when we did the CSA pickups off-site, we also did a mini market with it. We found that people really wanted to be able to buy a few extra fruits and vegetables that were seasonally relevant or portion up some of the things they had in their box. So we would send a site leader So it's either a work share or someone who was employed with us, because we wanted to be able to also manage customer expectations, right? That's the other missing piece with a box, is that if you drop it off and you don't talk to your customer, you have no idea how things are going. So we would send, the top 6 to 8 produce items that were in season at that time. We would sell those alongside of the box pickup. We would give the members an opportunity to order the CSA specials in advance and pick those up at the same time as well. And then we also set the schedule so that 3 times throughout the course of the season, we made it like a CSA member on farm week, and we did some special things on the farm, and we let members switch their pickup to come pick up on the farm on that particular week. It was a little bit of extra paperwork. It was a little bit of extra logistics to manage that piece, but it really was worth it as far as building long-term engagement with these customers and bringing them into an overall community experience. So moving on with CSA, I just want to briefly touch on some beginner tips. If this is your first time thinking about CSA or getting involved, we're going to look at those 5 internal assessment factors. So when it comes to logistics and assets, you need a pickup area, or you need the truck that would be required for delivery, as well as cold storage, right? We got to bring everything down to temperature before we put in a box and take it out for delivery on a hot summer day. As far as time and labor commitment, it's not just about picking and packing boxes. Customer management in a CSA environment is pretty hefty. Every single customer that signs up is going to have questions and special needs and want to know about this or that. So you do get a little bit tied to your phone and email in CSA customer management. As far as attitudes and aptitudes, you have to love people, love educating, and be really good at it, because there are a lot of people in the CSA. They all need a little bit of love and special attention. And then you've got to love to educate them about your practices and be able to really well explain why things happen the way they do. You have some downy mildew come in, you lose some crops, there's a weather event. You have to be able to explain this in a way that makes them understand that they're part of a community and part of the farm, and not just like losing value in a box when something doesn't get delivered. And then you also better be pretty amazing at growing. You can't put some half-quality produce in a box for CSA and expect members to come back or be satisfied with their investment. You have to be really good at growing a huge variety of crops so that your CSA is interesting to the user and people enjoy cooking those things. And when they open the box, they're like, wow, look at how beautiful this is. As far as
Rebecca, can I jump in for 1 sec on that?
Yeah, please.
Which we see this really often. We see this with experienced growers, but particularly with those of you on the call that are considering, either that are new to farming and that are considering a CSA. We caution you because the requirements, and when we talk about aptitudes here, the talent around growing the volume of crops that are necessary in order to keep a CSA member happy, very, very high. And the CSA market is incredibly competitive right now. And I think it's very important. We are seeing it on our side of the business, and you guys probably are too, that CSAs are competing for customers. And it may not be the best entry point for a new farmer. It's just something to consider and really evaluate.
True. I've also seen some new farmers come in and do great with CSA. I have a friend that started a farm last year, first year CSA. They found a place to do a pop-up farmers market that was in front of a busy retail instead of joining an existing farmers market. And they were able to build an audience of 35 members in their first season. That doesn't sound like a lot, but that was actually their goal. They wanted to start slow, take it slow. And he was an experienced grower because he'd been the farm manager at other farms before, and so they were able to use their personal network and do a great retail partnership and come running out of the gate. So there's opportunity, but you really need to plan, and you need to be a great grower. So moving on with communications and marketing, as Jen said, it's very competitive. So you got to be heavy on the communications. Members expect to hear from you on a weekly basis with an email, with recipes. And also, as far as seasonal marketing and keeping your customers engaged over the winter, you've got to send some content out, and you've got to do some very heavy seasonal marketing towards the later half of the winter. And then as far as managing customers go, online systems versus paper, right? We have systems like Small Farm Central that let us manage customers online. Some start with paper until they get to about like 50 members or so, and then it's just too overwhelming. And, you know, because you have to keep track of payments and who owes you what. And then a lot of email and phone time to be expected because customers always have questions. And now I'm going to pass it over to Jen. She's going to talk about our second direct sales channel, on-farm markets.
Great, thanks, Rebecca. So I'm gonna, I could talk about on-farm markets all day because I love them, and I love managing markets, and I love that, you know, ongoing interaction with customers. So in this first slide, we're going to talk a little bit about expanding on-farm market sales. So, and I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, and then we can answer questions on the tail end, just because I want to be conscious of our time. I think that the first thing that we need to start evaluating when we're talking about growing sales in an existing on-farm market is to know our business. So we need to understand, are we trying to get more customers, or do we need higher sales per customer? So if we're trying to increase sales overall, the first question we need to ask is, are we trying to drive more traffic, or are we trying to provide an experience that drives existing customers to spend more per transaction? And that's a really important piece to understand, because you need to know where to put your time, limited time and resources. We also need to know our customer. So we need to understand the profile of our current or ideal customer. We need to know who they are. So when I worked at a garden center that was actually owned by a large company. It was another brand that they were starting up, and so I got to see a little bit behind the curtain on how retailers, large retailers, think about their customer. And it's fun. I laughed when I realized it, but they actually had like a name for their customer. They could describe this person in detail, which was a little creepy to me. But what it did was it helped them focus their energy and attention on a particular customer, a particular subset of a customer. So understanding what age group you're primarily serving, understanding if your customers are mostly male or female, who's making the decision in the household, do they have kids, are they empty nesters, really can help you in your marketing, not just in your marketing efforts, but also in understanding what your customers are really what they're looking for. Trends in local food sales. So what are your competitors doing? This is a theme, right? Because we're asking the same question when we talk about CSA, and we're going to ask the same question when we talk about the other sales channels as well. But I would bake time into your schedule, or schedule of a staff member or family member, to actually really track what both independent and national competitors are doing. And we can never forget that we're competing very directly with grocery stores and even now big box retailers, right? And so it's important to understand and take advantage of their market analysis, because they're doing that work all the time. And so if there are pieces that we can pull from that, it's always valuable. The seasonal assortment. So this is one piece that over time I have realized is incredibly important for on-farm markets to be ahead of the curve seasonally, because that's where we excel, because we have the direct relationships with other farmers, or we're growing the product on our own farm. So we really need to make sure that we have the first peach of the season, first local peach, or the first strawberry of the season, and that we're really promoting and driving traffic and sales through those opportunities, because that keeps a rhythm of customer interaction with us on a regular basis. I think we've all seen, those of us that have run on-farm markets see that customers are waiting for that opportunity to come and pick the first strawberry. And then, is the customer queen? We all know that women tend to drive the purchasing in a household, and that's why I say queen instead of king. But we really need to ask ourselves if we've created a service culture, and what differentiates us. So what's the experience that we're offering? Because every time every time a customer buys from an on-farm market, they are going out of their way to purchase from a farm. And we need to remember that in all of our interactions, which takes me to the cucumber incident of July 4th. And this is just a really small example of what I'm talking about when I talk about creating a service culture. We were open for July 4th with limited hours so that people could pick up the pies that they had ordered and get their last-minute items for their barbecue. And we were literally about to lock the door, and the phone rang, and the whole staff was like, are we going to answer that phone? And I ran back in and got the phone, and it was a woman that was in a panic because she was making a salad, and she was wondering if we had any cucumbers and if she could come and buy them. And we were all literally heading out the door, and we sent the staff home, and I said, I'm going to leave, but I'm going to leave you a bag of cucumbers on the gate, and you can come and pick them up and pay for them whenever the next time you come in. The experience of this woman, to me, I'm like, I want to get to our party, but to her, it was like a transformative experience on the farm, and she became one of our most loyal customers and advocates. So really, going back to what Rebecca was talking about earlier, and really building those relationships and helping to understand the customers, and then allowing your customers to become your best advocates is a huge advantage. Next slide.
Yeah, Jen, I was just going to quickly add something about this case study that you mentioned. Building brand cheerleaders is a really important part of your marketing and your customer service experience. You think about social media these days and how driven people are by what they read on Yelp or what they might see on Facebook, or even what their friends say. And having somebody, somebody has a bad experience, they're going to tell 10 people. Somebody has a good experience, they're probably going to tell one. But somebody has a really personal, transformative experience like this, and they become a cheerleader for you. And they are out there telling everybody how amazing you are. And that there is no way to put a dollar value on that, because you can't create it, with specific spending. It's something that you have to create through a culture of customer service.
Yeah, that's so true, and it's really something that can't be replicated at a national brand. And that's one of our biggest advantages as independent retailers. So this beginner tip, this could be 5 slides in and of itself, but I think, on-farm markets are amazing investments. And so the biggest beginner tip I can give is really to do your homework. And so establishing a new on-farm market requires a marketing and traffic analysis. And when I say that, I actually mean how many cars pass your farm every single day. We really need to understand who we can capture, and if there's an investment. There's always that farm that we all know them, that are like, 5 miles down the road that nobody goes down, and then you make a left onto the dirt road, and they're popular and everyone loves them. But I think that as the marketplace continues to get more competitive, and we see national retailers in some way co-opting local, and co-opting some of the kind of our core tenants as farmers, it's very important for us to understand if we can drive the sales that we need in order to cover our costs and to see a profit. And the other piece, which is huge, is understanding local codes and zoning. So the first farm that I worked on, Willow Creek Orchard, it took 4 years to be able to get approval to build the market. 4 years. Now, in that time, we were selling $300,000 worth of product out of a wedding tent on the property. And so it's always important to think about what your opportunity is and not overspending to get there. If you can sell it out of a wedding tent or off of a roadside stand trailer, do that first. Don't always go for the big apple. And I think understanding that true infrastructure needs and costs are important. So on the flip side, if we build a market and then it doesn't have all the basic facilities that we need in order to be profitable and successful, if the flow doesn't work, if we don't have a cooler that's sized appropriately for the sales that we're trying to build, if we don't have a POS system that allows us to track and to understand and analyze our business. When we started out at Willow Creek, we had to buy these big, expensive cash registers. And now we have all these great online options that are relatively inexpensive POS systems that give us that are pretty high functioning. So that's something that we just want to be really conscious of, and really understanding the true cost, because anyone that's done a construction project knows that we always need to add 20% at least to whatever the estimate is. And then the final thing that I would say is that we really need to ask ourselves a very important question. That's, where do we want to spend our time? And are you really a retailer? Do you really want to be a retailer? Grocery is the smallest margin business out there. And in order to be successful, you need to be very competitive and very good at it. And it can be an all-consuming job, and it is not for everyone. And so it's a really important question, like, do I really want to invest my time and energy into being a retailer and having a presence? Do I want people on the farm 6 days a week or 7 days a week? Rebecca?
Yeah.
Are you there?
Okay.
Okay.
I'm here. All right, so moving on to on-farm markets, our next direct sales channel that we're going to talk about is online sales. I'm going to put in a little caveat that we're just going to talk about this one briefly, because next week Simon from Farm Central is doing a full webinar with a deeper dive into this topic, driving more sales on your farm through online sales channels. But I do want to briefly touch on it today because it's an important, one of the important direct sales channels that we can get involved with. So starting out with, how do I explore my market potential, right? Is this something that I feel like I have potential to make a good impact on my business and make great sales? So there are really two types with examples that we're going to talk about today, two types of online sales. The first type is, I have a unique product and I want to offer it for sale to the general population through a shopping cart platform on a website. So an example of this might be if you were recently at the Pasa conference, in the snack area, the Sweet Farm was selling different types of sauerkraut. And you can go on the Sweet Farm website and you can buy sauerkraut and have it shipped to you at home. So that's an example. I have a very special product that I want to sell to anyone who wants to come on my website and buy it. The second type of online sales that we're going to briefly talk about is add-on sales for CSA or buying clubs or other type of boxes that you're doing. In the first example, we're selling to the general population. In the second example, we're doing upselling to our current customers, right? So those are very different things. In the second case where we're doing add-ons, we already know who we're talking to. We already know who our target audience is. We have some pretty good ways to access their opinions and figure out what they might want and then make that happen. So we would really just need to focus on being efficient, doing the right fulfillment, and being a great marketer. In the first example, who are you selling to? You're selling to the general population. So this can be a little bit trickier. And before anybody just gets the idea of, oh, I'm going to start an e-commerce business because I have this amazing product and I have a lot of competition locally, or whatever reason you might want to open it up to selling online, just a few words of caution. You know, before you go into selling anything online, you certainly want to make sure that you've test marketed the product. So have you tested your local demand for it? Have you done any pop-up events where people have tasted the product and given you feedback and you know that it's a big hit before you go after a larger audience? See what kind of feedback you're going to get from a more local audience and then move on from there. And the other word of caution just about e-commerce sales to the whole national population is that shipping is really expensive, and packing goods for shipping is really expensive. You have packing materials, you have boxes, you have lost packages that need to be replaced, you have shipping fees, and I think a lot of companies struggle to figure out how to charge for these services, especially when we're competing against really big national vendors that offer things like free shipping and that are getting much better shipping prices than you are. So it's important to consider all the factors and that you're actually charging enough in shipping and handling to cover those costs and your time to pack and ship the boxes you know, a lot of people don't know this unless you've actually worked in e-commerce, but e-commerce's dirty little secret is that the shipping fee that you're seeing on the website from the product that you're ordering is usually not what that company is paying to ship the product. It's usually shipping plus a markup. So like anything else you might be selling, shipping is sort of considered a service and is usually marked up. And companies that don't mark up their shipping have a really hard time figuring out how to stay profitable in e-commerce. So I'll just put that word of caution out there. And so a couple of beginner tips for either one of these models. We need to always remember that orders need to be filled on time. You know, if you go online, you on Amazon, you order something, you expect pretty instant fulfillment, and if you have Amazon Prime, you expect to receive it in 2 days. Otherwise, you expect to receive it, you know, sometime within the week. If you have a business online where you're selling kombucha or jam or sauerkraut or cakes or whatever it is that you're selling, and you're only filling orders once a week, you better have a really clear outline for customer expectations right on the shipping page of your website, because people will become very easily dissatisfied when there's a dissonance between what they expect and what actually happens in fulfillment and logistics. You'll want a streamlined ordering and fulfillment system, so you'll want to be using some kind of a shopping cart that spits you out invoices and mailing labels and really the various elements that you need to get the item packed and shipped pretty efficiently. Otherwise, you'll be spending way too much time like pulling information and collating sheets and things of that nature. You always want to keep the web store and the inventory updated. So like back to the kraut example, if you sell 10 flavors of sauerkraut and you're out of one, you better turn that item on the website to out of stock so people can see that you have it, but they know you don't have it right now. You know, it's hard to get over that disappointment when somebody orders something and they don't receive it or they have their order canceled. The other piece about inventory updating is that if you're doing add-ons to your CSA boxes through the web, like you can come on and add milk and add cheese and add yogurt and this and that, you're going to want to keep a really tight inventory so that you don't have waste, because waste is obviously incredibly expensive on something where there's already small margins. And also expect to spend that time every week updating your inventory, because a lot of these software systems will let you put an account that will automatically wind down to out of stock. And also, you may have different items from week to week. So you want to make sure you're getting that updated in time for when the store opens for people to add things to their boxes. Because if you don't provide a good customer experience with this, people will try it once and then never try it again. And if you get somebody to try it twice and it's not right the second time either, you can certainly forget about them ever coming back to that system. The fourth point is just continuous marketing to prevent churn. So if you are doing add-ons, your customers will forget that this is there, or they will forget that the service is available to them. You'll need to market to them every single week before the store opens, and you'll probably need to give them some kind of incentive to come into the store and order, like, hey, this cheese is on special, or these milks are, you know, buy two and get, you know, credit towards this. People do want to see specials and dynamic offerings, and that's sort of what brings them into click, especially if you're trying to bring them in for the first time. And then the last question is, does this fit your organizational aptitudes? Do you like working on the web? Do you enjoy doing online retailing and marketing? Do you have the time to go in and update the web store and keep the inventory updated? Do you have someone that can pack the boxes every week, or are you going to be doing it at 11 o'clock at night after you put your kids to bed? You have to just make sure that this is a fit for what you want to do. So I'm going to stop there and leave a deeper dive into this information to next week's webinar. And
Rebecca?
Pass it back to Jen. Yes.
Well, Rebecca, this is Tracy. We do have a question from one of our attendees. Do you have any POS or inventory management software or services that you can recommend or that you have experience with?
Well, I guess that really depends. Like if you're talking about doing add-ons for your CSA, or if you're talking about selling something straight out to the end user. You know, if you're building a site where you're selling like a value-added product that you're going to box and ship, Shopify makes really easy to use platforms, and they start out at a really low cost, and then once you need more robust reporting, you can upgrade. You will probably need somebody who's pretty web savvy to get that integrated into your website for you. And then I think when you're doing add-ons, I think the system that Small Farm Central has built works really, really well. We used to use that at Greensboro.
And if you're,
so I hope
if you're talking about, I'm sorry, if you're talking about retail options, we actually have explored many of them, both in our own with hands-on business experience and also for clients. So if someone's interested in getting some of that information, we've done a few POS system analysis for several customers, so we can actually send that if you guys want to email us.
Great. All right, Jen, I'm going to pass it back to you for farmers markets.
Okay, great. So again, how do we explore our market potential? I think that this is another area of direct sales that's becoming quite competitive, and I think it's very important to research potential farmers markets very carefully for product assortment, competition, management capacity, and by management capacity I mean the capacity of the market managers to market appropriately, to manage the vendor assortment appropriately, and then, understanding sales volume. So is there a fit with your farm? I think what we're seeing is I'm not sure the statistics. I think it's 60%, and someone can disagree with me on that, the increase in farmers markets over the last several years. And many of those are driven by the interest of the actual community to provide a community service, right? So this is about quality of life. So they want somewhere to bring their kids on Saturday morning and bring the dog and have coffee and buy some vegetables, and that's not the same thing as a market that is driven by farmers, driven by farmer and customer needs, and customers that are actually coming with money in their pocket to buy their groceries for the week. So it is really important to think about being really cautious before you jump into a market, because there's quite a few hidden costs in farm market management that we don't often think of. Cultivating relationships. So we can't forget marketing when we're looking at farmers markets, but we also can't forget marketing to prime markets. So the ones that are full, that are always hard to get into, that have had the same vendors for many, many years. I think we're all aware of which ones those are in our communities, and Rebecca could speak to this, but we have a client that we're working with that she's been cultivating, Rebecca and the client have been cultivating a relationship with a DC farmers market for the last year before they were finally invited to become a part of the market. And so there's a investment there. Knowing in advance what your sales.
That's true, Jen. Not to mention. Oh, I'm sorry. Not to mention that Not to mention that before finding that good relationship, all the time spent on cultivating relationships with other DC farmers market providers that went nowhere. So
yeah.
It is harder and harder, especially as a vegetable grower, to get into these markets.
Exactly. So knowing in advance what your sales goals are, so it's really important to establish that. There's obviously going to be a build, but if they're not met, you need to be prepared to evaluate what you can do to improve. So if this is about marketing or potentially about display or product assortment, or if you're experiencing the limits of the market itself and you can't waste too much time on a market that's not delivering the platform that you need. I'm really sorry, I'm having a tickle in my throat. Beginner tips. So display, this is actually not just for beginners, right? Because we're all always working hard to maximize our display, which can feel like a burden when we're in a rush and we're trying to get to market, but I'll talk a little bit more about display as we get further on in the presentation. And product assortment. So are we bringing something, are we finding a niche? Rebecca's going to talk about this a little bit in a marketplace. And that's key for establishing your brand. And know the market before you invest in a season there. So really do your homework. Marketing is key to establishing your presence and driving sales, so don't assume that they will do the marketing for you. Next slide.
Sure. Actually, I think this is back to me here.
Yes, it is.
As we've been talking about expanding the sales channels, we've covered so much information across 4 different opportunity sets. And so we just want to come back with a quick reality check. So the reality check at the end of the day when we're thinking about all this stuff is, will this be profitable and what is my return on investment? So we want to understand where there's potential, to expand, and then there's also going to be an increased bottom line, right? We don't want to grow something that's not profitable for the enterprise. And sometimes we don't have good enough data. Like, we're running multiple enterprises on the farm. We haven't been the best at bookkeeping. We're still fairly new. So where do we start? We just want to start by thinking about what are our sales versus our direct cost of goods sold in that sales channel. We want to think about what we're spending on time and labor. If we're doing all the labor ourselves, that's fine for now, but eventually we'll need to consider the replacement cost of that labor as we get busier and bigger and need to hire people to do labor and become managers ourselves. And then also thinking about waste. If you're not really sure where to start, if you don't have rock solid data, I think you just start with a best guess of time, labor spent on different things as a percentage, and you just do it from the gut. So like, okay, I'm running a CSA, but I'm also going to farmers markets, and I'm spending 3 days a week on this and 3 days a week on that, so it's probably pretty much a 50-50 split. You could start with something like that if you don't have better data to dive in. And then also that might give you a heads up on data you want to track for the future. And I think we also want to consider other variable costs like fuel. Like, oh, wow, I'm driving, 400 miles a week for my farmers markets, but for my CSA, I only have one offsite drop, and I'm only driving about, 20 miles for that. So when I think about my fuel costs, it's really, 95% going to the farmers markets channel. So think about other ratios like that as well. You also want to think about your investment in marketing costs to grow and a portion of your overhead for each of your channels. But just a word of caution about dividing up your overhead, because obviously if we say, oh, we're getting this much of our gross margin from the CSA and this much of our gross margin from the farmers markets, and our overhead is this amount, and we're only contributing part of our overhead from the CSA and it's not enough, well, just be very careful, because if you're like, well, then you could easily take the logic to a place where, well, what if we don't do the CSA anymore? But those overhead costs are not necessarily going to go away because they're fixed. So just take the overhead piece with a grain of salt, but you do want to think about how each of your different enterprises are supporting your farm as a whole. The last little piece we want to touch on before we start to go into our mini modules is niche product marketing. So I just want to do a little side note on value added in niche products, because we can often see that there's, light bulbs going off when we think about these things, and that people get really excited about adding them to their enterprise, but it's with caution because they can be very costly. So if I'm thinking about developing a niche product for one of my sales channels, we want to address if there's really an opportunity and what are my skills, right? So am I really good at something that I'm ready to bring to market, and then people want to buy it? And sometimes building a niche product is really just about building a new kind of display so that people interact with the product differently and then fill their basket. And so what I mean by that is, like, when we go to the farmer's market and we see, in season in July, we see like 10 different types of spicy peppers, and they're all laid out by the pint or quart, and people might not be touching them because that's a lot of one variety of spicy pepper to go home and use. And if you like spicy peppers, you probably want to think about, buying a mixed assortment of them so that you can go home and experiment as a cook. And on the next slide, I actually have a picture. I'll just go there for a second. Over here on the right side of a pepper bar. So this is something that somebody built so that they could allow their customers to mix and match different spicy peppers in a pint or quart. Actually sold a lot more peppers that way, and people weren't so intimidated about buying a whole lot of one type of pepper. So just thinking about the way that you display and interact can certainly change or drive sales in a different direction. The next point is, when I think about my value proposition, does something already come to mind? Like, am I early on in my business development? I know there's another piece that I want to offer, I'm just not ready yet. Well, that might be something we're thinking about. And then the last piece is, what about a value-added product? People make jams, they make sauerkrauts, they make fermented vegetables. What about maybe adding something like that? So on the next slide, I just have some things to consider, right? We want to come back to cost-benefit analysis, the incremental income on those things versus the incremental cost. Let's really think about it before we do it. And remember to assess those 5 areas of internal marketing. And I've got a couple pictures here because I have 2 quick stories I want to tell about niche products. The first, relating back to the shiitake mushrooms that you see there on the screen. I worked with one farm that was raising pastured chickens and grass-fed beef. And they were desperately trying to get into a farmer's market in their area. And they were having a really hard time getting in. There were already a lot of other livestock vendors, and no one really wanted to give them a spot. So once they started experimenting with growing shiitake mushrooms, this really opened things up for them because there were no other mushroom vendors at their local market. So once they had the shiitake mushrooms, it opened a doorway for them. They got into the market, and then they were also able to start selling their chicken and beef as well. So it was a really good thing for them to think about adding on. The other example I'll quickly touch on is the strawberry jam here that you see. So initially at one of the farms, we started making strawberry jam because we always had leftover strawberries that were going to go bad, and we wanted to do something with them. So by the time we took the leftover strawberries, put a staff member in the kitchen at $10 an hour, cleaned them, cooked them, jarred them, boiled the jars, put the labels on, and selling them for $4 a jar, we were actually losing money on the strawberries, if you could believe it. So we knew that there was a demand for the jam, though, and we thought maybe if we put some effort into reworking the business model for it, that we could make it work. And so we looked at what would happen if we actually bought intentional strawberries for the jam, made it a product that was consistently available, promoted it, slightly raised the price, and then figured out what we would need as far as like much larger cooking pots so that we could work in a commercial kitchen and process, 50, 60 jars at once instead of 8 or 10. And actually this turned out to be a big win, and we ended up making 600 jars of strawberry jam at a very specific time when the strawberries were at their cheapest. And we planned it, we staffed it appropriately, and we ran it all through in a giant batch. And so once a year we make a huge batch of strawberry jam, raise the price a little bit, and turned a profit on it. But without doing the analysis on it and doing it as like a hip-jerk reaction to strawberries that we didn't want to spoil, it turned out to make a huge difference one way versus the other. So just a word of caution, really think about niche products and value added before you jump in, and make sure that it's going to improve your business instead of just reducing waste. And so next, Jen's going to, and so the bottom line lesson of this whole module is, do more of what you do best, because that's really where you're going to excel and succeed. All right, so I'm going to pass it back to Jen. She's going to start walking us through a mini module education on visual display, which is so important for our farmers markets and farm markets.
It is really, really important and critical. And I've done full sessions on this as well, so I think there's a lot to cover. But I think the core message, the core takeaway is that this is, when you invest in visual displays, you're investing in your marketing and you're investing in sales. There's a very direct correlation. So first slide. And these we can run through pretty quickly because they're mostly pictures. And so this is something that may sound a little flowery, but it's really something that I think is really critical, is that we want to be thinking about it from the consumer perspective, from the customer perspective. How are we engaging? How are we inspiring? How are we delighting the customer? That's how I think of any display that I'm doing, or any way that I'm interacting with a customer, which can feel daunting, but we see payoffs in sales. Next slide. We will always want to consider the customer experience, as I said. We really want to make sure that the work that we're doing is focused on engaging the customer directly. Next slide. So when people buy, this I thought was interesting. So 93% of people look at visual appearance. Smell, texture, sound is a very small percentage compared to visual experience. 80% think color increases brand recognition. So I know that you've probably all seen those either on farm markets or farmers markets, and I'm thinking of a particular local farm in general that does just extraordinary displays, and they're taking that old adage of like pile high, watch it fly, to a completely new level. And so there's a real opportunity for us as farmers with beautiful, colorful products to begin with to really use that to our advantage. And so this idea that people are making a subconscious judgment about a product within 90 seconds of first viewing it is really important. So that's going to relate to our signage, it's going to relate to our displays, it's going to relate to our overall look of our booth, or certainly our farmers market. Next slide. Okay, so I know that I don't know if this is a chocolate goat, but it's a huge goat in a market that we're probably not going to be replicating this at our farm market or certainly at a farmer's market. But we do want to think about how we're going to surprise our customer visually. We really want to capture their attention. We really want to utilize what we have, what our biggest assets are, which is our farm and our product, to make sure that we're spending time and resources to visually engage a customer and to surprise them with new layouts, I mean, it could be as simple as a new tablecloth, a fresh tablecloth, new signage, pictures from the farm. Figure out ways to use the visual presence of your market or of your stand to really engage and excite your customer. Next slide. Signage. So even the sign at the bottom right-hand side, which is handwritten, it's not particularly exciting, but there's a really cool message there. We grow our own grains, we grind our flour, we bake your bread. And I think that is a really eye-catching statement, and it's a really clear, definitive, it's really reinforcing what their brand does. It's not probably took them about 2 minutes to write that sign, but it really has an impact, and I think it's really engaging. And so I think thinking about how to use signage as a passive way to tell your story. So if whether you're on the on-farm market or whether you're at a farmer's market, you're engaging with customers. You may not be standing next to someone. You may be talking to someone else. So how do you use the environment that you have around you, keep engaging and telling your stories and adding value to the customer at every opportunity? Next slide.
And Jen, I just want to add that, like, luckily, even though all of this stuff seems like so beautiful and may even seem out of reach if you're not quite here yet, the best part about this is that you can come so far in your own skill set simply through observation of other people who are doing an excellent job. So,
yeah.
You know, if you feel like you're not here, don't despair. Just, you know, open your eyes a little bit to the world around you and make some notes about some things that you think are amazing and relate to your brand, and then go back and make it your own.
Am I overshooting?
No, I mean, this stuff is so beautiful, and you know, if you're the guy doing the "we grind our flour, we bake our bread" handwritten sign, that's okay. But just also know that, you know, you don't have to go to school necessarily to figure this stuff out or take a whole lot of classes. You just need to have an eye to what you need to be looking for, and you can get lots of great ideas from other people who are doing an inspiring job.
Absolutely, and I always encourage, if this is not your area of expertise, if you could care less about what your display looks like, find someone in your organization, find someone in your family. There's always someone that really cares and is visually inclined and hopefully artistically inclined, and call on them. Lift that up as a real marketing, as something that's of value to your business, and you will see their return. So I think one thing that I would ask you to think about as you go away from this webinar is really, what's one thing that you could do to inspire, engage, and delight your customers? And that goes for CSA too, right? That's not just about on-farm markets or about our farmers markets. That's really, we should be thinking of that on a regular basis, because our customers are going out of our way every time they support us. And so there's real value in giving back to them. Next slide. One quick note on bestsellers. So from a retailing perspective, moving product around can actually really dramatically affect your sales, which is really interesting. So take a moment, even if you're not tracking it, ideally it would be great to track it and to track placement, but that's something that you probably only do if you were at an on-farm market. In a farmer's market, it's a very intense short period of time, but make note of when you move something and if you notice a significant increase in sales, and keep experimenting or encouraging your team. And this is where we can often lose our kind of brand presence at a farmer's market when we have, as we keep growing and we have other staff members acting as the market manager for our booth. Sometimes we can lose that that sense of urgency around what the booth looks like, and so it's important to keep thinking about and helping your staff and your team and your family members understand that if we change display, if we move things around, we can actually influence sales. Next slide. And telling your story at every opportunity is really key, and we can do that visually. Rebecca, I think I'm going to send it back to you.
Absolutely. So, Jen hit the visual display side of marketing. We're going to be talking a little bit more about promotions, planning in this mini module that will hopefully give you like a little bit of a practical guide at your fingertips to get a marketing plan on paper and start writing and taking action. Because I think one of the most intimidating things about marketing is, getting a plan down. We all tend to sort of do it by the seat of our pants, but once you have things down on paper and then you just let it roll out, you execute it piece by piece by piece from a plan, all that nervousness about what am I doing goes away because you're actually following a plan. It's pretty amazing. All right, so when we're expanding our sales channels and we're thinking about marketing communications, the number one question I like to ask myself or encourage people to ask themselves in determining the best fit for a sales channel is, what is my aptitude level for this type of customer service? And if you don't come back with a 9 or a 10, you got to wonder if you have staff that can do this for you and if it really is a fit. Because all of the direct sales channels require a very high level of customer service. So the next piece to just touch on briefly is managing growth and sales forecasts. So when we think about expanding and how much are we actually going to be able to grow, we want to be able to make a forecast so that we know how much marketing we're really going to have to do to drive that increase. So first off is, how will I attract more customers? Then what's my plan for sales growth? Let's pick a target. Is it 30 more members? Is it $10,000 in market sales? What is it? And what would be my associated costs with communicating with that larger audience? Do I have enough room in my grassroots marketing campaign to make that effective? Or am I going to have to buy advertising and buy social media posting boosts? Or am I going to have to get someone to design emails for me? Or what is it? And then the next question, which is what marketing planning will answer, is what am I going to say? Where am I going to say it? And with what frequency? And where will I intersect with these new potential customers? How am I going to get to them? So when we talk about marketing and communications, I think especially with the Pasa crowd, we like to think about low-cost marketing mediums. A lot of us are doing small entrepreneurial businesses. We don't have a huge amount of money to invest in advertising. And even if we did, like, our audience is so specialized towards, sustainable products or on-farm grown products that, like, I don't know that the newspaper is really where we're going to hit a critical mass of people who are interested in our more niche offering. So you think about these low-cost marketing mediums: referral marketing, email marketing, social media, getting listed in various directories like Buy Fresh, Buy Local, for example, or hosting events on the farm or off the farm, or doing community marketing where we hang flyers in coffee shops and do talks at the YMCA or the local church, or have things that we can distribute to the PTA or other community organizations that already exist, like Master Gardeners or a horticultural club, things like that, where we can reach a group of people that are interested in our offering all at once. One thing to think about, though, is that we don't want to put all of our prospects in one category. We don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket. If we're just going to do email marketing or we're just going to do social media marketing, we're taking a huge risk because we're basically putting all of our bet that we're going to find success in one marketing channel, which is a pretty dangerous game to play. And so I hope you like this chicken cartoon, because when you give a webinar, you can never hear if anybody's laughing on the other side.
I'm laughing, Rebecca.
Oh, thanks, Jen. All right, so talking about marketing vehicles, I want to quickly touch on email, and then we'll go into marketing planning as a whole. It's really important for folks to remember that email marketing is the most powerful tool that you have, and really we want to know, why is that? It's because you're already invited into a relationship with this customer. They've invited you into their inbox, they've given you their email address, they said to you, hey, I want to hear what you have to say, I'm listening. So that's pretty powerful in and of itself. And then you're in control of the message when it goes out. And who's getting that message. You can divide your list up in different ways. You can talk to different parts of your group in one way and different parts of your group in another way. And also, considering the very low cost of email marketing, it's the best return on investment, really, of any type of marketing you're going to do, and that's a statistical fact. I didn't just make that up. So if you're not doing email marketing, or you could do it better, just know that it will certainly be worth your time. The biggest challenge with email marketing is always building the list. You know, on the farm, I go to farmers markets, I have an email list of 300 people. Well, you know what? That's probably not enough. If you think about the fact that you're going to send out an email, and anywhere from 30 to 50% of people are going to open that email if you're lucky and you did a good job with the subject line. So just think about calling back. Like, you're talking to all these people, about half of them are going to listen to your message, and then about half of those people are going to really engage with your message, and that's if you're doing an excellent job. So there are different ways to build your list. Everywhere you go, everywhere you talk to your customers, you should have a clipboard with email sign-up. You should be constantly asking, and you should be updating your list on a regular basis. Don't collect all those email addresses and only type them into your list once every 6 months. Get them in there on a regular basis. And then also use social media. You can do different widgets from the email providers to get an email sign-up link that dumps directly into your email list from your social media pages. So right here I'm listing 2 service providers, Constant Contact and MailChimp. These are the 2 that pretty much everybody uses. They're very inexpensive and will let you send emails to your target audience. A word of caution: if you are using like Google Mail to send your group emails, eventually you're going to get shut down. If you're sending a lot of mass emails, you might get blacklisted, you might be considered spamming, and then none of your emails are going to get through. There are a set of actual laws called the Can-Spam Act that regulate our ability to send mass emails. And if you ever get mass emails, you can hit unsubscribe, and then they will be automatically removed from the list. You need to be complying with these laws, or eventually your emails will no longer be getting. So if you have invested in, good time to start. All right, so putting a marketing to-do list on paper. I'm going to walk you through a 9-step plan that I've developed with some of our clients for marketing planning as a whole. So you can see 9 steps here. We'll quickly walk through them, basically all the way from making time for planning and goal setting to tracking, evaluating responses in the end. And by putting it in a multi-step process, I think we simplify it, take some of the anxiety away, and help you to come up with a really practical way to get planning for your marketing. Okay, so step 1 is to commit to planning. You've got to decide you're going to do this. You've got to set some goals. We want to get X many more members. We want to get people to an event on the farm, whatever it is. Create a plan with many baskets, as we said, multiple vehicles. Write it down. I'm going to talk to you about how to break it into layers and actions. Those layers and actions are going to become to-dos on your calendar. And then, like anything else, seek advice, look at resources, be creative and have fun, and reward yourself so you don't give up, okay? You have to be persistent. Marketing takes time to turn around results. So step 2, identify your marketing milestones. What are the different goals and timing that I need to hit? And here are just some examples, right? Maybe on February 1st, your summer CSA sign-up opens. Maybe your shares begin on May 15th and you need to have your sign-up goal hit at that time. Maybe you have fall market season events that are another marketing milestone, or maybe you're doing a local food festival and you really want to get the word out for that, so you want to set up like a 6-week timeline to promote that you're going to be there. So the next 2 steps in the marketing planning process are set start dates and lead times for each milestone, right? So the first step here in this arrow in this forward-moving progression is that we've set our milestone events, and then we consider lead time for a campaign. So like, for example, if the first milestone is that CSA sign-up opens, and we want to be getting the word out about that for 2 or 3 weeks beforehand, our lead time for the campaign would then probably back us up to about January 10th. You want to work backwards to a start date for the campaign, which is what we just did, and then work backwards again for campaign design. So I need my farm manager to design me some things that I'm going to use, brochures, e-flyers, community printouts, things like that. So if I'm going to start my campaign on January 10th, I probably have to back up to like December 1st to get all those materials ready. So December 1st is the day I'm going to meet with my team and start to get some of these things on paper that we need to get figured out. The next step is to apply those dates to the calendar. So I did just kind of actually talk through that with you. We talked about the start date. We talked about backing it up to apply design time. And also content time, right? So it's not just about designing the graphics, but also about writing what you're going to say. So step number 5, once we sort of have a timeline and a goal outlined, we want to start thinking about vehicles for the campaign. I think the best way to start is by observing, where is our audience? Thinking about the vehicles that we feel most comfortable managing are also really important, as well as what's relevant to the business. So like looking at the vehicle examples in those graphics below. If I don't have a brick and mortar location, Yelp is not relevant to my business. I also may just not be comfortable managing Twitter. I don't understand it. It's what's this whole limit on characters thing? What am I doing? Who am I talking to? So think about where you're comfortable and what's relevant. Find an intersection. And then a good tip is to not start promoting an account until you know you can maintain a regular posting schedule. So it's like, okay, I started an Instagram account, I promoted it a ton, and then I never actually continued to post on it, so I sort of wasted all that time and energy promoting it and then didn't keep up with it. So it is important to set a regular schedule for posting, and then know that it's okay not to do everything. I mean, just in this image here, we have 7 different social media vehicles. And there's many more beyond that, and then there's also email and community marketing and directories and events and all these other things. You don't have to do everything, and it's totally okay. But you do want to find a nice mix of things that are a good fit for you. And then also don't forget this first bullet point, right? Observing where your audience is also a really nice way to help direct you to communicating with them. Okay, so step 6. We start to create a marketing calendar planning document and put activities on a calendar. This is a template that I have that we'll be happy to share after the webinar. But here's an example of a simple 4-column marketing planner that you can create. In the first column, we go back to our milestone events exercise where we thought about our whole annual calendar and all the milestone events that we have to promote throughout the year. And so here's an example, right? I want to illustrate with an example. We have a farmer's market season, May through September, October for a different market, November for a different market. And then in the second column, what are the marketing vehicles that we're going to use for promoting our participation in this farmer's market? Because we can't just rely on the market, right? We need to appeal to our customers. We're going to use social media, we're going to use email, and we're going to use updates on our website. And then we do a description of our campaign action steps that we've discussed with our team to figure out, what are we actually going to do on those vehicles. We're going to create a graphic listing for a monthly email. So in our monthly email where we're already talking about other topics, we're going to have a graphic that shows all of the farmers markets we're at and the days and the times. Pretty easy, right? But something we want to do. And then we're also going to share that graphic listing on social media because instead of typing it all in where people might not read it, we're going to share it as an image and then hope other people will share it. And then we're also going to get the hashtags and the direct call-out pages for all the farmers markets that we're working with so that we can use those when we post also. We're going to store those somewhere so they're at our fingertips. And then lastly, we're going to send interesting content to our market managers because we want to get included in their email blast and we want them to mention us on their social media or in their press release. And so if we send them interesting content, specials, cool things we're doing with our practices, or images, then they'll include that and help us promote as well. And then there's a column on timing, right? When we're going to update it, how often we're going to say it. And so we can sort of keep up with that every week just by referring to this planning document that we created. How long did this take? Probably 20 minutes. Now we have created more work to do, of course, because we have to do the posts, we have to create the graphics, we have to think of the interesting content, but at least we have a place to start. So step 7 is when we actually start to create what we're going to say. This is another template. This is like the second page in a spreadsheet where we have the different posting types. So column A is like the category of all the different things we think we're going to talk about in email and social media through the season. We're going to talk about our mission and values and our unique selling proposition. That's what USP stands for there. Our products, our other selling activities, our public events, our wholesalers and resellers if we're selling in other places, and then ways to grow our interactions on social media, like get more likes and get more friends. And then in the second column, we get really specific about the different types of posts we're going to make in those categories. So if we're thinking about mission and values, you know, what do we have going on that we can talk about that we might take for granted but that our customers find interest in? And then the last column, frequency, how often are we going to say it? So again, this is just a template. You have to sort of make it your own, but this is a place to start. And then
Hey, Rebecca.
The second, yes.
Hey, Rebecca. Hi, it's Jen. I just wanted to let the attendees know that, as you may have noticed, we're running over a little bit, and so we're going to be wrapping up this marketing section, pushing right through the event section, and so we'll wrap up probably at about 10 to 1 with a few minutes for questions. I just wanted to give everyone that update.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
So the first part of this is identifying the post types. The second part of it is just actually writing storylines within each post type. So for example, if promotions in the nursery were a post type that we wanted to do, these might be the different things that we're going to talk about. So we have storylines we can refer to when we go in and actually do our writing. Step 8 is getting it all into a calendar. I know this looks a little overwhelming, but we asked Greensgrove if we could use an example of their marketing calendar. And you know, they have 14 different enterprises on the farm, so we have a lot to talk about. Yours might not look like there's this much posting going on. And you might be feeling a little overwhelmed at the moment. All of this seems really complicated. Is there a shorter version? So one way to think about it is, you know, by your individual milestones. So I want to drive more nursery engagement and ultimately sales. These are the vehicles and post types that I'm using. I'm going to do a tip of the week, a promotion on Facebook and Instagram, and then a contest on Instagram, like a name that caption this photo contest or something. Then I'm going to schedule. So I'm going to create that calendar of when we're going to say these things and who's going to do the post. And then I'm going to actually write the posts and get them up online. The most important thing with any kind of marketing campaign is to track your responses, evaluate your campaign, and allow yourself to retool and improve. You know, on the backside of Facebook, there's metrics. On the backside of your email marketing, there's metrics. There's different ways to gauge where your interactions are coming from. See how you're doing. Don't beat yourself up about it, and just come back to the drawing board and try again. Jen, I'm going to pass it back to you to talk a little bit about event planning.
Okay, thank you. So we're just going to walk through this over the next few minutes. Event planning, I think, is an opportunity, as Rebecca said earlier, that even for CSA farms, even if we're focused on farmers markets, and certainly if we have on-farm market, we know our customers are very interested in engaging directly on the farm, and events can be a really incredible tool, although time-consuming, which we'll talk about a little bit, tool to really engage and to ultimately drive sales. Next slide. So when we're thinking about farm events, we need to employ 3 types of marketing to be successful in hosting our events. Word of mouth, so that's really about creating engaging stories, and what we talked about before, the cucumber incident. We really want to drive people to be talking about our events, and we also want to make sure that people understand them and have experienced them and can send that messaging out themselves. We're also building relationships, so relationship marketing. This is building a relationship over time. This is not about communicating in our marketing, which sometimes we tend to do, where we really want to push our own agenda, what we have on sale, or the crop that we just are swimming in, but we also need to make sure that we're building relationships and building a conversation. And the experiential part, which is really about when our customers and our members are actually engaging, on the farm, engaging in activities on the farm, and that's an incredible marketing opportunity because they take those stories back. And I think, Rebecca, you called it a brand cheerleader. And you know, that's not for sale. That's not something that you can buy. That's really about creating those meaningful relationships. Next slide, please. So one of the things we want to do is take time to understand the audience before creating on-farm events. So this is about, like, we do a lot of self-evaluation, but we also want to evaluate our customers and our audience as well. Who are they? What are they looking for? What value does the farm provide for them? And where do they communicate? How and where do they communicate? Is it social media? Are they using message boards? Are they communicating at where I live? It's the post office. It's the it's the signboard in the post office and the postmaster, actually. So we really need to understand where people are communicating with each other and sharing information. Next slide. So we really want to talk about what the personality and the messages of the farm, because we want that to align, right? Like, we don't want to be doing, if you don't like kids, don't have kid-friendly events. You don't want a bunch of kids running around on the farm. Or if you love kids, then maybe focus on kid-friendly and family-friendly events. So should it be, what's your personality of your farm? Are you kid-friendly, adult-focused? You have a lot of different variety and energy. Are you guys specialists in one thing? Do you grow garlic and therefore you want to have a garlic festival? Are you experienced or are you new to farming? What makes you unique? And there's that question we keep asking, right? Does the opportunity align with the culture of my organization and my business philosophy? Next slide. There's some things that we want to consider when we're evaluating event ideas. You guys are hearing this, we're beating that drum. What's our internal capacity? How do I add value, inspire, delight, serve my customers, my neighbors, and my community? So is the event that I'm proposing or that I'm thinking about it, am I purely looking at it from a driving sales perspective, or am I really adding value to the community? Do I have an event partner that could do the heavy lifting? Are there opportunities for collaboration? Do we have all the facilities that we need? What are the township limitations that we should know about? Making sure that we let people know in advance is always a really great way to avoid a confrontation in the end. So will the events intrude on my personal space and privacy? That's a really important question. Do you want people on the farm? Is it a value? Do you love hosting events, or are you really private? Are you and your family private? You need that time together because it's not worth it if it doesn't align with your personal goals. And can I get the word out? So if I put all the time and resources into the event, can I also do the work on the marketing side, which is what Rebecca just talked about? And so the other question that we want to ask ourselves is, what is the purpose of these events? So is this about marketing, or is this about making money? Do we need to drive revenue through the events, or is this about friend raising? And then what are we hoping to accomplish is a really important question because events take a lot of energy and effort. Next slide. Now, for the fun part, we want to talk a little bit about some event concepts. So we have weekly events, quarterly events, kids programming, adult programming, and then a couple of other interesting ideas that we just want to, this is really food for thought for you guys to start thinking about what might be practical and exciting for your business and for your farm. Next slide, please. So I wanted to show you a couple of real-world examples of very successful events. So some of you may be familiar with Bread and Butter Farm. They're located in Vermont, and they created a burger night. So they had ground beef. They had a lot of it. They were trying to sell it, and they thought that it might be interesting to open the farm up on Friday night. And they wanted to, as you can see here, they wanted to find a way to thank the community for helping them in their first year of business. So that's what they wanted to accomplish. So they understood the reason why they were doing this. What they didn't realize was that they would be averaging 500 people every Friday night. So they expected 75, they got 150, and it just kept growing. Burger night isn't about food, it's about community. So always making sure that there is a value proposition for the community and for your customers is really important. Next slide. This is just their a little bit about their marketing, and they're always making sure that folks know about program night. It's a huge driver for their business at this point. Next slide. We want to think about festivals, so quarterly festivals. This is a festival that I used to do called Mater Tater. It was clearly very family-friendly, focused on the family. It was accessible, it was inexpensive, it was fun, and this was really about a fundraiser. This was really creating an opportunity for us to open the farm and for people to have some fun. And we knew what we wanted to accomplish with that, and that was our goal. We gave out trophies for the Spud Derby, and this was really a thank you to the community. Next slide. Another thing to think about is kids programming. So this is a weekly series. This is lower impact. This is something that someone on your team could do, or if you want to do it, if you just need to get a break from the grind, if you're really good at engagement. But these are a couple kids who love being on the farm, and they're a great way to engage and to continue to drive loyalty and long-term relationships with your customers. Story time is a really inexpensive way. So if you have an on-farm market, doing a weekly story time in the middle of the day, we would do it on Tuesday mornings when it was our slowest time, and we would have 60 to 70 families come and participate and then shop in the market afterwards. Summer camp is a great actual revenue generator and relationship builder, but it really requires in-depth planning. So you may want to look for standard curriculums, or even a partner who may be more focused on education piece where you can partner together. Next slide. These are just a couple of other ideas that we might want to think about when we're considering what on-farm events to do. Obviously, dinners are very important and have the potential to be a great revenue generator and relationship builder, but they require a lot of effort and expertise. We've even seen some weekend adult workshops, which I think is a really cool idea, and the typical canning, cooking, and baking workshops that really bring folks to the farm for an hour, and then either they're there to shop or they're on their way to their next thing. Next slide. Setting those goals, and this is another theme that you're hearing from us, setting yearly, quarterly, and monthly goals. And you need to treat your programming or your event planning like a part of the business and track the impact. So you need to build a budget. It's very easy to go over budget with planning events because we get excited. We want to make sure everyone is having a good time, and so we really have to build a budget and stick to it. We have to build a yearly calendar. We need to engage our team, whether that's our family or our staff members, and make sure that they're on board. We need to price it right, build the marketing plan, send out press releases. This is a great way to get PR for your farm without having to pay for marketing, and always make sure you use your website, make sure it's simple and current. Next slide. Opportunity assessment, we've talked about that before. We just need to make sure it's the right fit for your skill set and your management capacities, what the community is looking for, and are you going big or are you going small? What is your goal? Are you looking to engage 10 people or 1,000? Next slide. These are other things that we just want to be thinking about. We always want to make sure to answer that big central question, can we deliver? Can we deliver also without killing our staff or our family? And because these will be larger profile events that will help define who your farm is in the community. Next slide. Looking for strategic partners to magnify your impact. See if there are people that you can partner with to do some of the heavy lifting. Next slide. And I think we're going to stop there because we'd like to open. We only have 9 minutes left, and we'd really like to take some of the questions that have been popping up. So we're going to leave it there, and thank you guys so much, and we look forward to hearing some questions.
Okay, let's see what we have here. We have an attendee that asked, what about insurance for on-farm events? Isn't that expensive?
It can be expensive. You need a rider for your insurance. On your insurance for each specific event. So you need to talk with with your agent. I always try to use someone local who understands me and understands my farm. And I mean, even just to give some context, when we do the Philly Farm and Food Fest, the rider for that 4,000 person event is $1,000, and that's that's with multiple vendors. So it's not as expensive as you might think.
Okay. Another question here. This goes back a little bit to when you were talking about cost-benefit analysis. What is your opinion on time to return for the investment?
So I think, this is Rebecca talking, I think it really depends on what you're investing in. I mean, if you're investing in a on-farm market, which is a brick and mortar location, your time to break even may be many years, maybe 3 or 5 years, and that may be okay with you. But if you're talking about an event on the farm, you got to break even that day. You have to make a profit that day. Or if you're talking about investing in growing a CSA, you probably want to see your return on investment in 1 to 2 seasons. So it really depends on you and your risk tolerance, and also as a small business owner, your comfort level with how long it's going to take you to get that money back, whether you're putting in your own personal investment or you're borrowing with a payback plan on a loan really makes a big difference.
Okay. Could somebody talk about texting as a marketing tool?
Oh boy.
I have never used texting as a marketing tool. Have you, Rebecca?
I have. I have mixed feelings on it. I think that obviously people want to opt in. You want people to opt in if they're going to be asking for text as reminders. I think for CSA, text marketing can be very effective, like as a reminder of when the store opens, if you're doing add-on items, or like coming to your pickup. But I think the most important thing to remember is to make sure people are opted in, because it's a huge violation of their privacy to send text messages without prior permission. People are used to receiving those things via email. And I think, at least personally, when I receive text marketing, I generally have no idea where it came from. It has to be well written. It has to be signed off on so that you know where it's coming from. And it has to serve a purpose. So I think just general text marketing for promotions is probably going to backfire on you. But text marketing to an opted-in group could potentially be effective. You have to look at it, though. It's more expensive than email.
And actually, I know Small Farm Central was offering, and I'm forgetting the name of the program, but they had an opt-in text program for farmers markets, for farmer market customers, to tell people what was going to be at the market so they could plan their week of buying. So you may want to ask that question to Simon too, or take a look at their website.
Okay. What should be done first, a marketing plan or a business plan?
Jen, I'll take that if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay, so I think there's a huge difference between the two. It is a great question. And, often we're stuck in this way of thinking that we've got to have a business plan if we're going to have a business. And, at KTC we have a bit of a philosophy that, business plans are useless if they're just being created to be stuck on a shelf. You really want your business plan to be concise, have specific instructions as to how you're going to operate your business and run your finances and your marketing. So to me, the marketing plan is just a piece of the business plan. I don't think you need to write a full-blown business plan. You would have a 2-page mini business plan, but unless you, of course, need to take it to the bank for a loan. That is the real driver or reason behind writing a full-blown business plan. So I think that if you're looking to grow your sales and you need to hit the ground running, the marketing plan is a tool that you can't do without. The business plan is something you want to evaluate on an annual basis to make sure you're in touch with your goals, with your value proposition, with who you're selling to, and a lot of this is part of a marketing plan. And then understanding how you're going to finance your operations and how you're going to staff and run your operations from a management perspective. I mean, really a business plan is just putting those 3 pieces together: marketing, finance, and operations.
Okay. We have an attendee asking, is having a petting zoo of some of our animals at a farmer's market a good way of bringing people over to you?
Well,
do you want to
animals are huge. I'm sorry?
I was just going to say, Jen, do you want to take that?
I will. Animals, and I think you could talk about this too with Milkshake. I mean, animals are a huge way to engage. They become celebrities, they become rock stars, and so I think if it works for you and it works for your animals, I mean, I think that there's an opportunity. Now, I'm just going to, a word of caution between bringing an animal to market for folks to quote-unquote meet and having an actual petting zoo where animals are being touched is two totally different things. And a petting zoo where folks can actually, where kids can actually touch the animals is very dangerous from a health and safety perspective. And I'm saying that, I mean, because there's a farm in the area where we used to live around the corner from Willow Creek that almost shut down and was very seriously affected from a business perspective, and also a child was made very, very sick by engaging in their petting zoo. So that's just something to think about, like making sure the difference between like come and meet an alpaca versus a traditional petting zoo. Rebecca, do you have anything you would add to that?
I would. I mean, just, you know, I think Jen's right on. Like when I was with Greensgrow and we had various animal pens across the property for education purposes, there was no touching encouraged, right? Like we put some signs up that was, you know, like, please don't pet the pig, he could bite. And we had a turtle tank in the tropical greenhouse part of the nursery, and, you know, we had to put a little sign that was like, if you touch the turtles, make sure you wash your hands. Turtles naturally carry salmonella. Like, just things that people really don't understand. And, you know, insurance is going to be different depending on what you're offering. And just also, I heard, you know, petting zoo and farmers market as opposed to on-farm market. You really may not be allowed to bring animals to a farmer's market. So just make sure you check your rules and regulations on that too.
That's a great point.
I can mention that in a prior webinar that we had with Brian Moyer, he pointed out also that perhaps if you're selling lamb chops, perhaps bringing a small lamb was not the best marketing tool.
I mean, I agree with that to a point, because, for example, at Greensgrow Farms, we had an on-farm market. We sold meat in the freezer. We sold bacon. We sold pork chops. And then we also had a pen with our pet pig, Milkshake, who was basically like the mayor of the neighborhood. So, but it did bring up questions. Like, you would hear kids say, like, Mommy, is Milkshake bacon? And so you sort of also maybe putting parents in a position where they're not really prepared to answer some of these questions, or maybe a little angry if they take home a child that decides that they want to then become a vegetarian that day and then not eat the food that mom and dad are putting on the table. So just some things to think about. I think it can work if there's a little bit of geographical separation. I mean, like the pig pen was not next to the freezer, and we had, you know, a full city, like basically a 2-city block property. But, you know, also, I believe that was Tracy that made that comment, that could also sort of backfire on you a little bit.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question here. I will say if we didn't get to your questions, we will follow up with them. Some of them are quite specific about resources, so we may be providing those links. And that goes to the questions we have left. We have, can you recommend a web page software or hosting services, and also where to go to get some of this data that you were talking about that bigger stores collect?
I guess I'll take the first one first. I mean, I think that there are actually several really nice web hosting opportunities out there. I think, and Rebecca, you can speak to this too. I think Weebly is a very nice basic website. WordPress is, I think, overall probably better looking but more involved. And then what's the new one that is like attached to Squarespace? They have beautiful websites. Do you remember what that's called, Rebecca?
I think it is just Squarespace. So Square is the iPad and iPhone POS system that a lot of folks are using at market, and Squarespace is the web platform that's attached to the Square product.
which is beautiful. They have some beautiful templates.
And then the information on the data that bigger stores are collecting, survey information, market information.
So, I mean, those things are proprietary, so those are harder to get. But there's a couple of ideas that I can throw out there. I think what I was referring to was more, was actually, I get in trouble for this all the time. My husband's always yelling at me because I'm always taking pictures in stores, and it's very embarrassing to him. And you may get asked to stop taking pictures. But what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the trends in the store, because they're doing the market research on their end, and then I'm seeing the results. And so that's one way that I'm assessing it. And then the other thing that you might want to consider is joining some business associations. There's one, and I'm not going to remember the acronym, but there's one for independent grocers, and actually they have a tremendous amount of, thank you, they have a tremendous amount of resources. And so there are other groups that are gathering information for their own members, and I would not underestimate the value of participating in some memberships like that, particularly if you have an on-farm market.
I believe there's also, Brian Moyer had mentioned the Hartman Group, and
Yep.
They do have a lot of good data.
They absolutely do, yep.
Okay, Michelle? Because I think that's about it for questions that we can answer in this time period. Again, if we have missed any, we will send you the answers via email.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Jen and Rebecca, for sharing this information. It was great. Just a reminder that we will send out a survey and follow up to this session too. So if people can give feedback, that'd be wonderful. So thanks everyone for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.